Y'all ever start reading a comic and the second and third pages are just a pile of dead bodies? Because that's how Last Shot issue 3 opens. Revolver and Len have crossed the desert and made it to the supposed safety of Mullen Caverns. As you would expect, they are just inside the opening of the cave system when we see them. A set of train tracks reaches out into the sunlight behind them. Support beams of concrete are spattered with bullet holes, and blood is splashed everywhere. A mountain of bodies is scattered around the cavern. This bothers Revolver little. Remember, he's used to this kind of thing. But Len is absolutely grossed out by it. Not that this stops the pair from moving forward. They pass the carnage by and are stopped at a massive metal gate. This thing is easily 2 stories tall, and it looks like the door to a bank vault. A very friendly man wearing armor, and God, that's gotta be hot, explains to Revolver how Mullen Caverns works. The short version is that they mine for gold here, which is then transported to a refinery. The gold is then refined, cast, and prepped for shipping. It is then loaded onto a train for transport. But you see, people kept taking the gold before they could ship it out. So the town of Mullen has banned guns. If you have a gun, you don't get in. This is kindly explained as Revolver removes the chambers from his handguns. He sets them on the counter, and the door slowly groans open. You know, for a town with no guns, you sure do keep a lot of dead bodies around, Revolver says. The guard is freaked out by this. Wait a minute, what are you talking about? But it's already too late. Revolver and Len are headed inside. Before the gate shuts behind them, though, a minecart shoots down the track. A handful of miners report to a big man named Riley that there was a shooting out front. Riley orders one of the men to get the sheriff, and then he tries to run for the slowly closing door. But another man holds him back. They can't risk running out there, Riley. What if the gunman isn't gone yet? You could be killed too. Sobbing, Riley drops to his knees. His son, Kip, is out there. The door out of Mullen Caverns shuts. My name is Ben, and this is Comic Book Breakdown episode 31.4 of Last Shot, Revenge All Over. All of the opening scenes for Last Shot have been pretty jarring. Issue 1 opened with Kraid punching a guy in the face, Issue 2 saw us dropped off in the desert with Len, and now Revolver has seemingly stepped into a massacre. From a writing perspective, that's a pretty smart tactic. The openings have all been dramatic, tense, cinematic, and pretty mysterious. This makes us immediately want to know more about what's going on and keep reading the comic. If you were in a comic store and you flipped open the cover and you saw any of these openings, you would go, well, what's going on in here? And then you would continue to flip further and maybe end up purchasing the comic. Ultimately, that's what you want. I would say that so far, this has been a well-used tactic by our author, Locke. Which is why it really surprised me to say that this issue, issue 3, is the first time that it doesn't really work for me. I have a really hard time believing that anyone would see that pile of dead bodies and just not take it as a warning sign. Revolver doesn't report the bodies to anyone. He doesn't take it as a sign that the town is super bloodthirsty or that the mines have some kind of problem going on. Like, even when he mentions it to the guard, he's just like, wow, you sure do keep a lot of dead bodies around here. And then walks inside like it's a normal thing for a cavern to do. What? If I walked into a mine and I saw 50 dead men stacked like cordwood off to the side, I would turn the floop right back around and keep walking. This opening is how horror movies start. As previously pointed out, though, Revolver is very familiar with dead bodies. We've seen him handle them before. And he is, in general, a pretty hard guy to rattle. This rather emotionally flat reaction from him is fitting for a character like Revolver, but it is incredibly jarring for me as a reader. Given how vocal Len has been shown to be in our last issue, I'm also surprised that she didn't say anything to the guard. She does complain to Revolver about his lack of a reaction, but honestly, that's it. Revolver's lack of shock I understand, but not Len's. As a minor thing, when we first open the comic, we see Revolver looking at the map, and then he looks at the bodies, and there's no reaction. We turn the page, and then you see Revolver and Len looking at the bodies, and Len goes, "How could you just say humph?" And then Revolver goes, "Humph." So I really feel like the lettering for humph should have been on the previous page, as in him seeing the bodies, and he goes, "Humph." And then Len goes, "How could you just say humph to this?" And then we would move on. So there's a slight lettering error here at the beginning of the comic. And again, it's nothing major, but it is going to go on to become a running theme in this particular issue that Revolver goes, humph, which makes me feel like you should have set it up properly here. The real thing of note here, for me anyways, is that the interior cover of issue 3 is actually a map. Much of it is obscured by Revolver's shadow, but we can make out the general lay of the land, Revolver's route further west, and the locations of our previous issues. So let's take a look. Revolver left Mammy's Diner and headed to Pattontown in order to fight Schindel in the first Draw one-shot. He then went to Hamilton, which is where he met Len and fought Kraid in issue 1. And then our heroes crossed the Bone Desert last issue, issue 2, finally making their way here to Mullen Caverns in issue 3. That is a super thoughtful, kind of almost a plot synopsis, and I really dig that. I am a bit annoyed that Len's destination, Nolam City, isn't shown on the map at all. Given how important it is to Len, you would think that it would warrant being on it, but apparently what do I know? Secondly, Nolam City is supposed to be in the east, and so Revolver has said that he is working his way west. But guess what? According to this map, the pair are working their way east. What a slip-up. Like, that's not even like a minor error, that's I don't know my basic directions. Unless, I suppose, in the world of Last Shot, the directions east and west are named for the opposite direction, which would be weird if it was, but I suppose that anything is possible in the world of fiction. This is a guy who has guns installed in his hands, so I mean, maybe. Despite these minor problems, do you know what I really enjoy about this map otherwise, though? The Easter eggs. Every member of Studio XD has a city or a location named after them. We've got Gainesbow for Arthur Locke, Parksville and Charlestown are right next to each other for Charles Park, Long City is clearly for artist Long Vo, and up in the north we have Visarutvani for colorist Saka, whose real name is Kid Koum Visarutvani. There are other cities that might be references, but I can't really say if that's 100% true or not. The town of Marville might be for Marvel Comics. I could see Della City being for DC, and Squaretown might be a nod to the video game company Square, now known as Square Enix, who made the Final Fantasy games. This is a much harder Easter egg to gauge than the creative team's names, but if it is intentional, then I think that it's super cute, and I really like it. I love when creative teams do this kind of stuff. These are fun, like, nods and winks to each other, and it's, again, clear that they're enjoying making this comic. In town, Revolver, Len, and us are surrounded by performers. The two stand next to a stage labeled Madame Fortuna's, but a magician performs on it at the moment. In the background of this panel, we can see a strong man and a scantily clad female knife thrower who has green hair. This woman also graces the cover of the comic, so I would expect her to play some kind of major role in this issue. In the bonus page for this issue that it comes with, she is called May, so I will refer to her as that moving forward. Anyways, the magician is dressed in a worn black suit. The edges of his sleeves are torn and tattered, implying that once upon a time this was a nice suit, but not anymore. The man also wears a top hat and a yellow vest over a white shirt. He has dark hair and a small goatee. He also has on fingerless gloves with thin fingers, which he waves in front of Len. From nowhere, a flower appears in his hands. "A touch of magic is all it takes," he says. Len is thrilled and excited to see real magic. She asks the man to do it again, and he does so. He waves his hands, and suddenly the flower is gone. Revolver huffs at this, and again, the creative team is clearly making this a thing, and he grabs the guy's other arm. Twisting it, he reveals the flower, carefully tucked away in his sleeve. "You don't really believe in magic?" he asks Len. It's all just tricks invented by thieves and beggars. The magician starts to sweat when he hears Revolver's voice. He stares at him carefully. Do I know you? Then it all comes back to him. The magician was taking a dump inside of Cordelia's house, the bar that Schindel and the Iron Steeds were posted up at back in the first Draw one-shot. As he was, struggling, let's say, bullets flew through his door, creating little peepholes. This allowed this guy to watch Revolver kill all of his friends in moments. In the real time, he drops the flower.
I'll kill him. I'll kill him for wiping out my gang. But how?
As the last member of the Iron Steeds lurks off, Len sadly looks at the flower dropped on the ground. And then it floats under its own power. An old woman speaks.
Oh, ye of little faith,
and gestures with curling fingernails. The flower dances in the air, coming to rest in her hands. Madame Fortuna looks like a witch from a Bugs Bunny cartoon. She's got a big chin, big nose, warts, and wild white hair. Her eyes also glow blue, which is definitely weird even for last shot. She has on a tall, curling witch's hat with a crescent moon design hanging from the front of it. This image is repeated on her chest.
You lost something, didn't ya? She asks. And you're a long way from home. It's an interesting fortune you have, girl. Come, give me her hand.
While Len is getting her future read, an alarm bell sounds. The people of Mullen gather around a stage for a public announcement. They report the attack at the gate, and the council has decreed that Mullen is going to stay shut until the mayor has arrived from Himmel. They ask for blood donations for the survivors and suggest that people stay indoors if they can help it. One of the men on the stage cradles a body that is covered in a bloody sheet. Revolver asks a passerby, "Hey, what's his deal?"
"That's Riley, the captain of the mining crew. His son Kip was killed in the attack. Everyone in town loves Riley and his boy. This is terrible."
Meanwhile, the madam continues to ply her trade with Len.
She can see that Len seeks her past, not her future. She's lost her memory, and only through finding her past can she have a future.
Len agrees with this, but how is she supposed to remember things that she can't remember? Fortuna's eyes widen.
Oh, there are ways.
Back at the stage, the final steed taps Riley on his big shoulder.
Hey, Riley,
he says.
I saw the guy who killed the gate crew, and Kip. He's here in Mullen.
And of course this jerk points Riley squarely at Revolver. And Riley is so angry and hurt that he buys this. He's ready to break Revolver in two right now, but the steed talks him down.
No, don't do it here. Do it down in the mines. Let's make sure this guy gets what he really deserves.
So a few men, plus Riley, approach Rev and ask him for help in investigating the mines. There is a lost child who needs finding, and they could use all the help that they can get. Revolver turns them down politely, saying that he's already babysitting, and he gestures at Len. Fortuna waves at him, assuring that he can go.
She'll watch the child. And besides, the town is sealed. No one is going anywhere.
The representative for the group nods. And if getting out is his main concern, once they find this kid, he can make sure that Revolver is first in line to leave once the doors are open. Riley sneers at this and whispers, "Yeah, in a casket." Well, Revolver can't really argue with that. He is down to help, I guess, and shakes the guy's hand. Revolver and the dudes head down into the mine. The representative, who did most of the talking, is explaining the mines to our boy, describing the main shaft, its weight system, how many kilowatts it uses. It turns out his ancestors helped to design it, so it's kind of like a member of the family to him. The important thing we're told is that the main shaft of metal is basically a tube, and that miles of electrical wires run through it. This will be important later. Back at Len, Madame Fortuna stands behind the girl. She has her hands on either side of her head, but she's not touching her.
Say your wish, child,
she says.
The spirit's answer to the power of words.
Len is just standing there, watching the moon swing back and forth before her eyes, and it seems like nothing's really happening. But May, the green-haired knife thrower, she walks by, and on her left arm is some kind of decorative bangle. It looks like a yellow snake eye set inside of a golden bracer. Yellow cloth is pinned underneath it, and it makes a jangling sound as she walks. And that sound seems to resonate inside Len. She calls out, "What use is my future in Nolam if I never remember who I am? Spirits, if you can hear me, I want my memory back." Her heart pounds nervously, and somehow it works. Her eyes snap open, but she doesn't see the present anymore. She sees a moment of her past. We get 2 panels of this. The first is a shot of some kind of medical tray. Various devices lay scattered on it, including a tube with some kind of fluid inside, a sharp crab claw-looking cutting device, and what looks to me like a mechanical heart. We can just make out smeared blood on the tray. The second panel is of a female hand holding that crab claw device in the air. Blood drips from it, having just made an incision. Wrapped around the operator's forearm is the same bangle that the knife thrower is wearing. Interesting. Meanwhile, down in the mine, the final steed whispers to Riley,
"Now's the time. We're far enough down. Do it."
Riley reaches out and grabs a lever. He yanks on it, and the drill starts to bore into the stone cavern above them. Riley shouts, "For everyone to leave!" And the steed encourages them, except for Riley and Revolver. The tour guide exclaims that the bit will overheat because there's no water in the pit. The whole thing could blow. And so everybody escapes otherwise. Inside the now sealed chamber, Riley confronts Revolver about murdering his son. And Revolver is appropriately confused because those people were dead when he got here. You've got the wrong man. Riley isn't budging, though.
His wife died giving birth to Kip. He put everything into raising him, making him a hard-working and upstanding man. Look at your hands! You're telling me those aren't the hands of a killer?
And, it's kind of a fair point with Revolver. But we know that Revolver didn't do it, and he says that he knows who did. They call this guy the Shadow Gunner. Now, if you'll calm down, maybe we can get out of this situation. Riley isn't listening, though. He charges Rev and throws a punch, which goes wide as Revolver dodges. He then raises his own fists, empty of their chambers. Okay, if you don't believe me, then there's only one way for us to do this. Riley then picks up a pickaxe and roars, rushing at Revolver. He swings the pickaxe downward in an overhead strike, aiming at Revolver's head, but the gunner catches the tip of the spike, stopping Riley's attack just in front of his face. Revolver then spins the pick, and thanks to his tight grip on it, Riley is flipped onto his side. Rushing forward, Revolver kicks him once more, switches legs, then twice, and finally he punches the big man in midair. Riley flies through the air and slams into the ground. Revolver humps in satisfaction. He then looks upward at the power shaft, which is spitting steam or smoke. It's kind of hard to tell. Revolver figures that has to be their way out of this mess. He picks up Riley, who is easily twice Revolver size, and then he jumps up into the shaft, and I don't know how he does that. A massive tangle of wires runs along the ceiling. A large chain runs down the center of the shaft, just suspended in midair, and I have no idea what it's doing there. Revolver isn't in love with this move, but as the chamber starts to collapse around them, he doesn't really have a choice. Revolver, who is still carrying Riley, remember, jumps onto the chain and runs up the length of it back the way they came. Outside the chamber, the tour guide and other people are met by the sheriff, who asks what's happening at the core. The tour guide says that it's overheating. They need to open the floodgates. They do so, and the water shoves Revolver and Riley out of the shaft and back into the main chamber. Revolver lands like a cool guy in a superhero landing. Riley just starts to come back around when the final steed rushes forward. He accuses Revolver of killing the morning crew. But the armored guard we saw at the beginning of the issue steps forward, saying that that's bullsh. He's got Revolver's chambers on him, and he holds them in his hand. Plus, if you look at the bodies, they were clearly shot by some kind of shotgun, not a pistol. You, sir, are a liar. The Steed sees that the rest of Mullen's citizens are now turning on him, and they close in to beat him up in a cartoon cloud of dust. Len rushes to Revolver and hugs him, relieved to see that he's okay. The armored guard explains that Fortuna tipped them off to the location of the killer. They had a posse running him down, but he managed to escape. The gate has been reopened, though, so they're free to go if they like. As Revolver and Len leave, heading back out into the sun, Len tells him that magic is real. She saw it work. You don't really think it's made up by thieves and liars, do you? She asks. Revolver answers with a and that ends the issue. So if you want to know why I brought up the complaint at the start of the issue regarding Revolver's lack of in response to Len, this moment is why. The creative team clearly wants to treat Revolver's as some kind of personal affectation, and they largely use it as a comedic effect in this particular issue. Which I don't really have a problem with in general, but it doesn't really work if your lettering is missing a word balloon. Like, it's hard to laugh at a joke when the joke isn't printed, right? Otherwise, we had two really big steps forward in our main story in this issue. Revolver says that he is not the Shadow Gunner, which we learned of last issue/episode. According to the Loons, the Shadow Gunner killed 500 men back east, the very direction that Revolver doesn't want to go. This issue, Revolver says that the Shadow Gunner is the one who killed all those people at the gate, so perhaps Revolver is hunting the Shadow Gunner in the background of the plot of this comic, and that's kind of cool. The second step forward is the reveal regarding Len. We don't know anything about the girl, really, save that she's got a scar and she's got amnesia. Now we know that she has been operated on, I guess is the best way to put it. Was that heart-shaped device put into her, though, or taken out of her as part of like a smuggling operation? I personally would guess that it was put inside, but honestly we don't know one way or the other. It'd be odd to show us the device and then show someone wielding the cutting tool second, but clearly this issue of Last Shot isn't the most finely wrought issue that we've had so far. There are some small mistakes that are piling up elsewhere, so why not here with this flashback sequence? That said, I would guess that whoever the operator was, they put that device into Len, although to what end we still don't know. Thirdly, can I say thirdly here? I mean, this isn't really a third point about whatever, it's my podcast. Whoever operated on Len, they wear the same bangle as May, the green-haired knife thrower, implying that either she is the one who did the work or someone else out there has a matching piece as her. I won't lie, I don't see the connection between the illegal black market surgery on little girls and knife throwing, but from a storytelling perspective, that definitely keeps me on my toes. It is interesting. Not that it needs to be an illegal black market surgery, I guess. Maybe this is some kind of Wolverine situation, right? And like May works for the government turning children into IEDs or something like that. I mean, like, I don't know. Anything is possible in the world of Last Shot up to this point. We've got a cyborg with handguns, a dude who's got a cannon strapped to his arm, and we've got men who sit in cacti all day throwing dynamite at folks. Why not have an evil government doing illegal body experiments on people? It could happen. I do like the speed at which Locke is revealing these little, like, tidbits about our cast. I see a lot of that, like, Wolverine-style storytelling in this comic, in which the cast doesn't know or talk about their past, but their past still haunts them the entire time. So Locke has to drip-feed us these reveals, and so far I like the pace of it, because outside of these tidbits, this issue kind of sucked. Maybe it's the awkward entrance into this issue, but I did not connect with any of it, and there are multiple reasons why. First off, we have no personal character connection in this story. We are honestly never given a reason why Revolver and Len are going to Mullen Caverns at all. Revolver only has two stated motivations so far in Last Draw. His job, which is hunting bounties, and paying back Aiden. Neither of these things are getting done in Mullen at all. Len's only desire is sticking by Revolver because he makes her feel safe and then getting to Nolam City. Otherwise, we have no reason for our cast to be here, and we have no reason to be witnessing this story. They aren't picking up supplies, or wanting a shower, or like a comfortable sleep in a nice bed, or hunting a bounty. Even if the idea was that Mullen was the closest city to them after their trek through the Bone Desert, you would think that like little Len would be complaining about being hungry, or dirty, or tired, and then that's why they visited. But nothing like that is ever hinted at or shown to us. And why does this matter, Ben? Who cares why they're there? Well, it matters because the pair of them walk into a 50-man massacre. No sane person sees that, shrugs, and then goes into town. How do they know the killer isn't in town? How do they know that the town wasn't, like, infected by disease or plague and that these people were killed and dumped outside in order to keep the others safe? Maybe these people were outsiders and Mullen instigated a no outsiders policy and then is just killing people on sight. There is legitimately no good reason for Revolver and Len to see those bodies and press on into Mullen Caverns. This story, this particular issue, has no reason to be happening other than the authors wanting it to happen, and that is bad writing. Secondly, the story elements inside of Mullen are so disjointed from each other that they just don't need to happen. Revolver has said that he didn't want to take Len's transport job because then he would have to fend off every gunner in the world to get it done. He's worried that other people will try to kill him to get to her, but once he's inside of Mullen, after seeing a pile of murdered people, Revolver just leaves her. He's got no reason to trust Madame Fortuna. He has no reason to assume that the killer is gone. He has no reason to think that the town is 100% sealed. Like, there could easily be an alternate reality where he leaves Len alone, and Fortuna sells the girl to May, or to the Steed, or another gunner in order to use her against Revolver. Or maybe one of those characters kills Fortuna and just takes the girl. Whatever the case may be, Locke has sold us on the idea that Len isn't safe unless she is with Revolver, and then immediately puts us into a situation where Len is actually perfectly safe without Revolver. That's contradictory. That's more bad writing. And that doesn't even take into account that Len doesn't interact with the overall story at all for this issue. Her glimpse of the past is an interesting reveal, sure, but it doesn't do anything to affect the present story or change Len in any way, or change her relationship with Revolver. To be quite honest, it's kind of pointless in the face of this main story. Similarly, the final Steed, who never gets a real name, not even in the bonus pages. He's just referred to as the Final Steed or the Sixth Steed. He's got the same basic story as Riley, to be quite honest. They have both lost people and they both want revenge. They both try to kill Revolver. The Steed is just taking the long way around and trying to get Riley to do it for him, which is just so extra. Locke could have easily combined these two characters together, at least for the purpose of telling the story in this particular comic. Like, think about it. The story could have been something like this. The Steed survived the deaths of his friends because of just pure dumb luck. He was taking a crap and got lucky. But with no more gang around him, he can't get money pillaging like he used to. So then he returns home to Mullen, where his wife and son live, tail between his legs. But then his son is killed by this mystery person, the Shadow Gunner, on the same day that Revolver and Len arrive in Mullen looking for a warm bath and a soft bed after their journey through the Bone Desert. The Steed could have been so lost in his rage, both for the deaths of his friends and his son, that he then tricks Revolver into following him into the tunnels and he tries to kill him. But he is then saved when Madame Fortuna has a vision of him being attacked and sends Len to rescue him after she has, a brief vision of her past or whatever. Len could even warn Revolver. The Steed could get desperate and then try to trap them all in the drill room, right? Revolver then has to protect Len, defeat the Steed, and then get all three of them out before they're killed by the collapsing cavern. He does, of course, or he would, I suppose. And then he's proven innocent of the murders. Maybe he kills the final Steed for the bounty, but then sends the money to his widow type of thing. Maybe he lets him go out of pity. Maybe. It could be a bunch of different things. But I mean, that's definitely a sleeker, more efficient, more personal story than what we got here in issue 3. Because I do like the Steed, like, in general. Like, I love him surviving the attack because he was pooping. It's just so silly. I think it's great. I loved him wanting revenge. That makes sense. I loved him manipulating into Riley to do it for him. Like, the Sixth Steed is a stupid but fun bad guy character, which does kind of seem to be Locke's favorite type, and I'm kind of there with you. But I do think it's weird that the story didn't tell us about him sooner in any way, shape, or form. Because the bounty that Revolver collected on the Steeds was for the entire gang, right? I would have thought that when he got to the, like, I don't know, like the bounty collection office and then dumped the corpses on them, that someone would have noticed that he missed one, right? Like, Revolver walks in and he says, I'm here to collect the bounty on the Iron Steeds. And then the guy at the counter's like, okay, let me make sure you got them. That's 6 Iron Steeds, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm only counting 5 bodies, buddy. You didn't get the whole gang. And then Revolver would go, well, I shot everyone who was where the Steeds were when I shot them. Like, how many more of them can there be? And the guy at the counter's like, there's one more. You almost got the whole set. But tell you what, this job is like 90% complete, so we'll give you like 90% of the money. How's that sound? And if you ever do kill that last guy, bring his body in and we'll give you the last bit of it. And then Revolver goes, because that's what he does, apparently. Like, the final Steed survival indicates, to me, that author Locke isn't really thinking through the logistics of his stories all the way through. Kind of like having Revolver say that he's going west, but then showing us a map that indicates that he's actually steadily moving east. Locke's writing is certainly fun and inventive, but here at issue 3, it's beginning to show a little bit of the weaknesses that Locke is bringing to the table in terms of the long-term planning for the comic. As indicated earlier, Riley's portion of the story really falls flat for me. Like, I just met this guy, so I'm not very invested in his character or his loss, especially when like 50 other dudes just died off panel, and the main character doesn't care about these deaths. He is the dude that I'm empathizing with. I'm sympathizing with Revolver, and Revolver doesn't care a crap, so why should I from an audience perspective? Because I'm human and it's tragic to lose a child? Like, come on. Like, in this particular instance, if Revolver isn't bothered, then I don't need to be bothered either, which is a shame. Because I should care. But this comic has been so flippant in regards to the importance of life that I just don't care. And I'm not going to start here for one story, right? Riley being mad enough to attack Revolver does make sense. Him using his knowledge of the environment to try to kill Rev makes sense. That said, I don't fully understand the murder attempt. It seemed like the cast was walking down like a long tunnel, right? That had this big drill tube at the top of it. They seemed to have reached the end of the tunnel, where the bit was, but this area had a sealable door for some reason. And then Riley started the drill, and the others fled, and he sealed the door. Okay. The story seems to indicate that normally the miners would flood the chamber where the bit is drilling in order to keep it cool. But if that's the case, why not just have everybody leave the chamber, flood the chamber, and then drown Revolver? Why not, during the fight, force Revolver to stand underneath where the bit is drilling into the rock, and then the falling rubble would just crush him? I mean, honestly, why would Riley and the Sixth Steed even bring along other dudes? This murder attempt would have been way easier if the Steed and Riley were the only ones who were attempting to kill Revolver. I mean, they could have just, like, clubbed him with the pickaxe and been done with it. One of them could have been talking to Revolver, telling him, check out this drill bit. Like, that's a big drill bit, right? Wow, it's super big. And then the other one could just take the swing and boom, he's dead. And actually, if the cast was walking down the tunnel made by the drill, then they're just going down a straight path. Like, there's one road down, and it's the tunnel road, and that's it. So if a child went missing, why the hell do you need, like, 5 dudes to look down one tunnel to find one child? Like, there's only one place he's going to be at. You're either going to find that child on your way walking to the drill bit, or they're going to be at the drill bit. It's a straight line. It's a single tube. There's nowhere else for the kid to go. You really need 5 kids to walk down a straight line and find a kid? For all the talking done in this issue, and there was a lot of talking, like especially when the tour guide character is explaining everything about the drill, there is a lot of talking done in this issue in order to explain things. But honestly, I just don't think a lot of this makes any good amount of sense. There's very little logic going on for as much as people are talking. And honestly, even if it does make sense, at least for me, it's just not very engaging. We do get to see Revolver in a hand-to-hand fight. He is as good with his hands as he is with his guns. You know, Riley is bigger than Revolver in every way possible, but Revolver handles him carefully and relatively easily. As a showcase for what Revolver can do, this issue works well, but I kind of just found myself bored at every turn. Like, is Revolver just too good at this point? He can block bullets with his arms, he can shoot machines with precision like he did with Kraid, he can fire the wicks off of dynamite like he did with the Loons, and now he can fight hand-to-hand against an opponent twice his size, carry that man on his back, jump with that man on his back, and run down the length of a chain with that man still on his back. Revolver isn't just a gunslinger, he's freaking Superman at this point, and that's kind of causing me not to care about the things that he can do. The other things show a very clear and very specific form of combat that Revolver is proficient with. He is good with his guns, that is the thing that he is skilled with, and he's better than anybody else at using them, and I'm willing to believe that. Partially, honestly, just because it's a Western, and people in Western are always good with six-shooters. But to add into that the fact that he is a expert martial artist and he has superhuman jumping ability is really just starting to push my plausibility regarding Revolver's physical capabilities. I do applaud Revolver not killing Riley when he had the chance. He could have, relatively easily, or at the very least, left Riley to die at the sight of the drill bit, but he doesn't, once again, demonstrating that Revolver isn't a killer because it's easy or for the fun of it. He is a professional, and if he isn't getting paid to do it, then he's not going to do it. And it is nice to see that morality still at play. At least the character writing is consistent, even if I do have problems with a lot of other stuff. Otherwise, this issue is super light on bonus features, which is a shame. We get but a single page of sketches, and many of them are like in inverted colors, so they're all white lines on a black background, and it just makes them look so much rougher and harder to understand for me. They are, of course, for this issue's guest stars, meaning we've got Riley, the Sixth Steed, Fortuna, and the Knife Thrower, which is where I got her name, May, as I said earlier. And we have a letters page, which is actually a really good one. Last Shot didn't just use letters that were sent in to them in their letters pages, but they also used emails, which were still a relatively new thing at the time, and message board posts, which you don't often see referenced in comic books, even stuff from the early 2000s. CrossGen did it a couple times too, and again, it just made the interacting online that much more fun that the company was paying attention. But artist Long Vo actually responds to this issue's letters, and one of the things he talks about is the origin and inspiration for Last Shot, which I thought was super interesting because I didn't see this information referenced anywhere else online. I'm not going to cover that here because this episode's long enough, but we'll cover it in a wrap-up episode. There's actually been a bunch of interesting material in these letters pages, and I just haven't wanted to include it with individual episodes because I didn't want them to run for too long. So we are going to do a bit of a behind the scenes episode after our next episode with the wrap up for everything. We'll cover all the weird bits and pieces that I couldn't quite work into our main narrative. Another minor complaint, because why not? It's what I do, is actually this issue's title. I've been using these single issues titles as the titles for the episodes of the podcast. Food Chain, Metal in His Heart, and I mean, why not? They fit pretty well for what's going on in those stories. Food Chain referred to Kraid's personal motto and how the strong can eat the weak. He just ended up running into someone who was stronger than him. Metal in His Heart referred to Revolver's cold demeanor towards, well, everyone, but I mean specifically Len in that issue, especially after she opened herself up to him emotionally. But this particular issue was called Six String Noose, which I do not get. A noose would have typically been made of rope, and rope is a bunch of fibers or cords that are strung together. So, I mean, you could have a rope made out of 6 strings, but 6 strings classically refers to the number of strings that a guitar would have, right? Implying that this issue would have had some kind of musical theme or musical weapon. Maybe a gun that's also a guitar, da-da-da-da-da-da, and when you're playing it a certain way, it then fires bullets. Or maybe a musician who uses his guitar strings like garrote wire or something like that. Why am I giving these ideas out for free? I should be making my own comic where a musician uses his deadly guitar to get revenge on the people who killed his wife or something. Anyway, this issue's title sucked, although it did sound cool. Like, I like the phrase six-string noose. But it didn't seem to have anything to do with anything, so I ended up making up my own title. You know, the Steed wanted revenge, Riley wanted revenge. It was revenge all over, so there you go. Overall, despite having the enticingly beautiful May on this issue's cover, this issue's interiors are a bit of a letdown for me. Issue 3 is easily the worst issue of Last Shot so far. While there are interesting reveals regarding Revolver and Len's overall story and existence, the aspects that are specific to this issue are boring, quite frankly. The new characters are very one-note, and almost all of the dialogue is either the tour guide talking about the drill or Riley muttering about revenge. Like, he does it every couple of panels that he appears in. It honestly feels like Revolver and Len, like, stepped into somebody else's comic and just don't need to be here. Which is a real shame, because our next episode, our next issue, is also our final issue of Last Shot. Next week, Revolver and Len's journey sees them boarding a 3-story tall train. This is a Western, after all. You didn't think we were going to get through this without a train scene. Or a train heist. Because that is exactly what is in store for us. Plus, the Shadow Gunner reveals himself, which is easily my favorite part of this issue. And it turns out that Revolver isn't the only man with guns built into his body. Join me in a week for Comic Book Breakdown episode 31.5 of Last Shot, Angel of Death, Angel of Mercy. If you enjoyed this episode of Breakdown, please make sure to hit that like button, and if you are not subscribed to the show, then click on that as well. I love getting feedback, and I would really appreciate it if you did so. If you have any questions, concerns, or would like to suggest a comic or a series to me, Breakdown can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and on a variety of podcast platforms, with links in the description for this episode below, as well as the email cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Thank you for your time and attention.